and welcome to I-24 News Defense Magazine. I'm Alon Ben David with your weekly review of security, intelligence, and strategic affairs. In this edition, the former head of Mossad Intelligence and Foreign Relations gives a special interview to I-24 News Defense Magazine. And a wave of terrorism launched by the Islamic State threatens the stability of Egypt. Let's begin. For 3 decades, Haim Tomer lived in the shadows in the world of secrets of Israeli intelligence. Until recently, even his name was classified, but among intelligence agencies all over the world, he was well known for being an expert on Syria and for heading the Mossad's intelligence division and international cooperation directorates. As tension rises along Israel borders with both Syria and Lebanon following the recent strike against Hezbollah operatives in Syria, Haim Tomer joined us at the studio. Looking at the last clashes along the Israeli-Syrian and Lebanese border, do you think that is behind us? The clashes have ended, Hezbollah has made its retaliation and now will desist?
I think that the current round is over. The balance was set in the eyes of Hezbollah, Syrian, and the Iranians. There is a slight chance that the Iranians are looking for something which is a long-term revenge, which could be taken overseas, like the event in Bulgaria, in Burgas at the time, or something of that sort.
Israel almost admitted that the target was Jihad Mounia. In your eyes, assuming that indeed it killed the Iranian general, was that a mistake?
I think that when it comes to terrorism or fighting terrorism, Israel is always maneuvering between two polars. One polar is that the most, I would say, inexpensive way of operation is what we call attacking the heads of the terroristic organizations. It's not a mass fighting like in Gaza Strip, the 5 rounds that we have experienced in Gaza Strip since 2008, 2009. It's cheaper because you're attacking a certain specific, defined, well-defined target.
But in this incident, you didn't do it covertly. You had your signature left all over the operation.
I think that an event that happened in the Golan Heights, the way that it happened, without getting into the question who did it exactly, I would say that in the eyes of the Iranians, Hezbollah, and the Syrians, it was done by Israel. And this is enough. The moment this trio, this unholy trio, think that it's taken by Israel, they would revenge because of the fact that for, I would say, something like 18 months, Hezbollah and the Iranians, after the allegedly attacked air strikes that were taken by Israel, and allegedly by the Iranians was, so to speak, related to Israel, they decided to put up a new formula, which means if you attack us in Syria or on the borders of Syria and Lebanon, we would retaliate.
So that is the new equation that we are facing now in the north?
Absolutely. This is part of the new equation.
Any Israeli operation in Syria or in Lebanon?
I would say any substantial operation, especially, I would say, killing of Jihad Mounia, who is a symbol in the shared community, or an Iranian general would be retaliated. No question about it.
Before we continue, this weekend, the Washington Post and Newsweek both published new information about the assassination of Jihad Mounia and the role the CIA played in this operation, along with Israeli intelligence. More in this next report.
2 weeks after Hezbollah commander Jihad Mounia was killed in Syria in an alleged Israeli strike, new information has come to light about the assassination of his father, Jihad Mounia. The Washington Post and Newsweek reported that the Israeli and American foreign intelligence services worked together to assassinate Hezbollah's international operations chief. Former U.S. officials have now confirmed the CIA's involvement in what had been thought to be solely a Mossad operation. According to the reports, the Israeli and American intelligence agencies tracked Mounia's routine before deciding that his occasional solitary evening strolls would present the best opportunity for carrying out the assassination. On February 12, 2008, Mounia was walking down the street in Damascus after dinner when a bomb planted in a parked SUV exploded, killing him. Prior to the blast, a team of CIA watchers were monitoring his movements in the Syrian capital. Mossad agents remotely triggered the bomb from Tel Aviv. The Bush administration had explained the killing as national self-defense, claiming Mughniya was actively plotting against the U.S. and implicated in the deaths of hundreds of Americans, including the bombing that killed 63 people at the U.S. Embassy in Beirut in 1983 and the killing of American soldiers in Iraq. U.S. intelligence officials had assured lawmakers that there would be no collateral damage. The bomb was tested repeatedly to ensure that no one else would be hurt in the blast. Both the U.S. and Israel still declined to comment about the exceptionally close cooperation between the U.S. and Israeli intelligence services.
Both reports seem to have a lot of intimate information. Can you confirm any of that?
With your permission, I won't get into the question, is it correct or incorrect, the reports that were published lately in the United States. But I think the more interesting question is why it was published by now.
Why now?
I believe that somebody in the U.S. That was behind the leak, so to speak, wanted to deliver a message to Jerusalem. He wanted to say, within the concept or within the framework of cooperation, secret cooperation, between Mossad and CIA, between Israel and the United States, we can get targets, even substantial targets like Imad Mourania, without paying the price that was paid by unilateral, so to speak, allegedly unilateral operation as was done a few weeks ago. I believe that this is a message, if there is a message.
Basically what you're saying is that the Americans are telling Israel, look what we could have done when we had good relations.
Since I believe, according to the foreign publications, that it was done by the CIA, accordingly even led by the CIA, I won't believe that it was published in Washington without any kind of a green light or a blind eye of the administration in Washington. And the timing of the publication should raise the question why it was published now. I believe it was published now because of the fact that somebody in the U.S., I believe in the administration, aimed to extend a message to Jerusalem, saying this was the good old days of the intimate operational cooperation between Israel and the United States, CIA and Mossad.
What you're hinting now is that now relations are not that good. Such cooperation is more scarce.
The message, according to the way that I understand the so to speak, the timing of the publication, it's a message that aimed to, I would say, to clarify that such a cooperation that was taken some years ago could not be taken by now because of the general atmosphere of the relation between Israel and the United States. I believe this is the message.
Haim Tomer, I want to thank you very much for joining us. Stay with me for the next subject. Last week, series of deadly attacks in the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula marked the first big incident of violence since militants in the region pledged allegiance to the Islamic State last year. Here's more on recent developments in Egypt.
The fallout continues from one of the most violent terrorist incidents on Egyptian soil in recent years. 32 were killed in an attack on Egyptian security forces in the northern Sinai Peninsula Thursday night. 4 different targets were hit, with most of the casualties occurring in a bombing of a military hotel and base in the town of El Arish. Responsibility for the attack has been claimed by Ansar Beit al-Maqdis, a jihadist organization based in Sinai which has recently pledged allegiance to the Islamic State terrorist organization. But in the wake of the attacks, the Egyptian president has directed most of his rhetoric at the Muslim Brotherhood.
We will witness a big wave of terrorism because we confronted an organization while it was at its strongest. An organization that has been around for many years. It is stable, making plans, ready, and has success around the world.
Comes just as relations between rival camps in the region were beginning to thaw, with recent meetings between al-Sisi and Qatari representatives aimed at cooling tensions. An Egyptian court ruled on Saturday to ban the Azadin al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, openly backed by Qatar.
This is a battle. I don't want to say that the countries that faced battles against terrorism in Afghanistan, Iraq, and many other places around the world walked away and left terrorism behind. But in Egypt, we will not leave it. No, we will not leave Sinai. We will not leave Sinai to anyone. Either Sinai belongs to Egyptians or we die.
Fierce words from the Egyptian president. Joining me now via Skype is Annabel van der Berg, an independent correspondent from Cairo. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello.
How much of what's going on in the Sinai is felt in Cairo, in the capital?
Yeah, well, basically, we can see the Sinai region as almost an entirely different country than the rest of Egypt, because the Sinai has been under control of Bedouins for ages, for decades, and in the last couple of years also more and more terrorist groups have found their bases in the Sinai territory. But besides Sinai, in the rest of Egypt, basically, there are almost no terror threats, I must say. We have seen, of course, that since the ouster of ex-President Mohamed Morsi, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, that there have been occasional attacks, occasional terrorist attacks in, for example, the capital of Cairo and also other cities.
Last weekend in Alexandria, it seems like the Islamic State is slowly going into Greater Egypt.
I wouldn't say so. Basically, the Sinai at this point is still the heart of Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis, who has pledged allegiance with ISIS, of course, recently. But I wouldn't say that they have become a very big threat for the rest of Egypt. We have seen, of course, that there are more attacks, but we've seen as well that the security forces nowadays are basically in control of the border between the Sinai and the rest of Egypt. So what we see as well is that the attacks that are taking place in, for example, cities as Alexandria and also Cairo, that these attacks are rather small attacks. But of course, we also know that Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis, like ISIS in Syria and Iraq, they want to break down, they want to destroy the security heart of the country. And so they are often attacking police buildings and security officials.
But despite the fact that you describe it as a different country, we've seen Egyptian TV anchors break into tears after the recent attacks. Is the Islamic State indeed perceived as a threat to Egyptian national security?
Well, people have a lot of confidence in the security system in Egypt. The army has taken on the streets, they're patrolling everywhere. It is still very tense, I must say, but it seems that the police and the army are believed to be in control over the security situation. So people are also happy that nowadays they again have a leader that has bonds with the army. President Sisi is a former army officer. So people are full of confidence in him. They're happy that the Muslim Brotherhood is now no longer in control, because they still see that the Muslim Brotherhood is related to Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis, because both are Islamist groups. So in Egypt, we see that there is not really made any difference between both of the groups. So they see now that the army is basically back in control in Egypt, that they believe that these groups, these Islamist groups, will be defeated.
Annabel, please stay with me. We still have Haim Tomer with us. Haim, how much is the Islamic State a threat to the stability of Egypt?
I think that the combination of the ISIS in Sinai Desert and I would say, secret cells, underground cells of the Muslim Brothers together that share more or less the same ideology, more or less the same goal of toppling down Assisi and his regime. It's a kind of a serious threat. It's a serious threat. It can, of course, border on that, but I would say shortly that the combination of the extreme Islam inside the hinterland of Egypt, beyond the canal, and in Sinai, which is a kind of half-Norman land for the last couple of years, it's a kind of a threat. It's the combination of a land that gives them the shelter and the base to build themselves and the possibility to get into their targets from this land.
So what are the chances of the Egyptian army's campaign against the IS in the Sinai?
I think that for the last year or so, the Egyptian military campaign against the extreme Islam in Sinai is serious. It is not enough yet to get I would say, a kind of comprehensive results. But it's serious. It's serious, and it would be serious.
This week, Egyptian court outlawed Hamas military wing. Does that mean that Egypt will lose its position as the essential mediator in the region?
I don't think so. I think that between Hamas and Egypt, since Sisi took over, there is a kind of rift and tension. But on the other end, this is the big neighbor. This is the only one that can deliver some sort of relation with Qatar, with other elements that Hamas is very much interested in. So Hamas would have to swallow this kind of frog. And though they outlaw the military wing, they would keep open relations with Cairo.
Haim Tomer, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Annabelle in Cairo. That's all we have time for. Have a safe night from Jaffa Port.